Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Dining in the Dark experience. So in a few minutes, you will enter a room that is in pitch darkness, and you will be guided by a blind person that will be with you during the whole experience.
Hello, welcome to a rather unusual edition of the Kitchen Cafe. We've left the studio behind to experiment with our taste buds, and that's meant a trip to St Andrews and the Old Course Hotel, where they're staging a meal with a difference. It's an interesting concept, not entirely new, but certainly new to me. I'm Claire English, and today I've got my trusty producer Phil Sime along with me, because he'll be more familiar with what's about to happen next. Not so much a case of opening our eyes to a fresh eating experience, more like closing them. All will become clear if you stay tuned. Now, Phil, we've never in all our years of working together dined together, but this is something else. And you, for once, you've got the upper hand. Explain why.
Oh, Claire, welcome to my world. This is absolutely fascinating. I am jumping up and down with excitement about this. Somebody like myself who's completely blind, we're about to embark on a dining experience where everybody's blind, because the lights in the restaurant will be completely out.
Are you a bit nervous?
There's two things that make me nervous. One is my environment, and two is the people around me. And because we are going into a strange environment for me, so I don't know anything about it, I'm anxious about that. And secondly, I've not got you there by my side to be giving me that reassurance of when we go into the restaurant to say, Phil, watch out for this, watch out for that. Or even when the meal gets put down in front of us, to give me some visual description. You and I will be on a level playing field.
Hey Phil, I've just spotted someone we need to talk to. It's Simon Baldwin. He's the guy that manages the PR for the resort here at the Old Course Hotel. Let me just go and grab a word with him, OK? What is this event all about?
So, Don Le Noir coming to the Old Course Hotel is something that was sparked by an idea back in the autumn last year. Everybody knows St Andrews for its golf, and the resort and the hotel here is renowned worldwide as a golf hotel and as a destination for people having weddings and parties and conferences. And although the food and drink experience is exceptional here, people wouldn't necessarily think about us first and foremost for our food and drink.
How is this going to work? Because it will be Don Le Noir in the dark.
It will be completely in the dark, and we've used on all of our social media chat up until now, we've used the hashtag dining in the dark. It's to get that impression across that this is something that's never before happened in Scotland. One of the things that we wanted from the beginning was to do something that was unique to Scotland. It never happened here before. And one of the team had been to the Don Le Noir restaurant in London, and they said we thought that would be a good idea. So we had the conversation with the team in London. They liked the idea as well. It coincided with their anniversary, and we just thought, well, that would be great to do something that's unique and provide something for people across Scotland to try and come to St Andrews to do something that they would never otherwise do.
But I want to know then, is this all about the food, Simon, or is it about the overall experience? Because people usually go out to a restaurant to have the food. Yeah,
from our point of view, it's the food, but it's about that experience, but heightening it. So we wanted to do something where when people leave, and we've got a fantastic guest book that people have been signing after the experiences over the last few days, they're blown away by the food because it's not what they expect. Now, that's all I'm going to say, because we don't tell anybody about the ingredients. Until you come out, you don't know. But there are genuinely amazing Scottish ingredients that Chef and his team have sourced from some fantastic suppliers and producers around Scotland. So again, it's showcasing Scottish cuisine as never before. And the number of people where we told them what they'd eaten were, well, I would never order that. And actually, that was delicious, but I don't like it.
But they ate it.
So, yeah, but
they accepted it.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had no judgment on it. Yeah.
No preconceived ideas. They didn't know what they were eating, and when they ate it, they loved it. But if we'd have told them what it was in advance, they wouldn't have chosen it.
A good point then to bring in Fabrice Rochka, who's the director of Don Le Noir. Do you think diners these days, they're looking for something more when it comes to eating out? They're not just wanting good food, they're wanting something else.
Yeah, I think in this business, you don't have a lot of innovative concept, and we need innovation. So we can say there is three main benefits in this experience. The first one is in terms of sense. we're proposing a surprise menu. So you don't know what you're going to eat. So you have to
No choice. You can't choose.
Yeah, we have options.
But
we have
not
meat
really.
option, vegan option, and the fish option. But they all are surprise menu. So you realize actually that in the normal life, sometimes it's the color of the food to make you think about the food. But in the dark, it's a completely different story. The second benefit is the social aspect of the experience. In the regular restaurants, you never talk to your neighbors, the other tables. In our concept, you have to. So it's very funny. Excuse me, you're my right. What's your name? Where are you from? And the communication is also upgraded. We have to listen to each other in the dark. And of course, the main point of the experience is the meeting with disability. In the dark, you are welcomed by blind people, and you have to trust them. You have to follow them, and they guide you to this unique experience.
So, can you put your right hand on the right shoulder of the person that is in front of you, please?
This is scary now.
So, ladies and gentlemen, are we ready to head inside?
We're
Yes.
ready to rumble.
Yes.
Don't let go, take it steady, and we'll be absolutely fine. We've basically got a curtain, more or less in front of us, which we're just going to start to navigate through. It's on your left-hand side.
Oh my gosh, it's completely...
Pretty dark,
Oh,
isn't it?
wow. It's like somebody had a pot of black paint and then he put more black paint on top of that.
So I'm going to guide each of you individually to your chair, and in a very short space of time, we will all be seated around the same table, which will be very exciting.
Oh my goodness, this is just spatially bizarre. I'm just thinking, this is noisy, cacophonous, confusing. It's like I'm in some sort of mad cell with these distended voices that are coming from nowhere. And I'm sitting, I know you're right beside me, but there's nobody to my right yet, I don't think.
No, I don't think so.
No. Well, this dining in the dark is new to me, Phil, and it's not new to you, but in this context it is. And it's new to people in St Andrews because they're getting this. But actually, the idea of dining in the dark is not entirely new. And there's a guy who kind of brought the idea to Britain with a little bit of help, Simon Preston, who's a food innovator. And I talked to him about this and just tried to find out from him why he wanted to come up with this kind of eating experience.
Well, at the time, I was interested in this idea that we eat with our eyes and how much is our sense of taste and our sense of enjoyment of food dominated by by looking. Scientists have proved that there is a direct link between what you see, particularly the colour of food, and what you taste. It's a primal thing that, if something looks off colour, then it's going to taste off colour because it's about survival. So I was interested in exploring that and exploring about how if you took away a diner's dominant sense, which for most people is sight, do the other senses then compensate? Your smell, your touch, your taste, and the other one.
Well, don't tell me what yet, because what happened? Because I'm curious to know, first of all, what happened when people were invited to this restaurant to dine in the dark? What was the experience like?
The experience was way beyond what anybody imagined, I think. And I think that although we set up the experience to be about experiencing food without sight, inevitably it became more about experiencing life without sight. And people were very moved by the idea that they were the able-bodied person in the light being taken into the dark restaurant by their blind waiter, and then they became the disabled person, and the blind person became the able-bodied person, if you like.
Yep.
So that I think giving up control was quite an emotional thing for people.
But what about that thing that you started off talking about, the whole idea of tasting food with our eyes as well? When you don't have those visual cues, are the other senses heightened after you've tried an experience like this?
Well, the science would say that they are, and I believe that they are. And I spoke to a number of academics who, explained to me the evidence that yes, your sense of taste and smell and so on will improve if you were to lose your sense of sight to compensate, to do with brain power and connections within the brain. But I think that doesn't happen in 5 minutes, So being led into a dark space isn't going to give you that immediate sense of, wow, I've got supercharged sense of smell. But you do focus on your other senses when that's taken away. You really, really think about what you're tasting, and you really think about what things sound like when you eat them. And I think for me, it was really interesting that I realised how much when I sit down to eat a meal, I'm busy chatting and I'm busy focusing, and I don't actually, half the time I can't even tell you what I've just eaten. It's gone.
That's the point, isn't it? It's about mindful eating and actually experiencing the stuff in your mouth and the sensations, all that stuff that we race through in life.
Yeah, and discovering that certain foods have incredible depth and incredible layers of complex flavours that you probably only experience 25% of just because you don't focus on it, you don't think about it.
And the relationship between the diner and the waiter, when you can't see them, you're much more vulnerable. You're depending on them.
Very much, yeah, you're very much. I mean, I'm sure listeners are sort of clicking through the practicalities of what would happen if you were sitting in a restaurant and as I said, going to the loo or pouring a glass of water, or you've spilt something, or whatever's happened, you're suddenly diminished to a point where actually you can't deal with it. You have to ask for help. Very much exposes your vulnerabilities.
Simon Preston, food innovator. What a fantastic title that is. And I just want to pick up on something that he said there that rings a bell or strikes a chord with me, with Simon Baldwin. Vulnerability, the whole thing about being in the dark and being exposed to a completely different kind of eating experience. And actually, it's kind of, I don't know, it's intimidating, it's different, but I don't know, Simon, is it liberating as well?
I was going to say exactly that word. I think it's liberating. We all came in kind of clasping the person's shoulder in front of us, fairly terrified in terms of where we were going because we couldn't see a thing. But actually, whilst just sitting at the table, the conversation as it's opened up around the table with complete strangers, just chatting freely. There's no preconceived ideas. There's no misgivings in terms of who you're talking to. There's no prejudgment because of the person you're looking at, thinking, well, I don't really like the look of them, or they might not like the look of me. That all goes. So we're just sitting here chatting away about the whole experience, and it's liberating.
Is it more intimate? Because I feel that it's almost like we're sort of cozying in and we're sharing something here, and you don't get that in a normal restaurant environment. You get the usual stuff of, badinage and chatting to people, but there's something slightly different about the conversations that are going on around the table.
Yeah, that's true as well. And again, because there is no decor around us, there's no theme to the restaurant around us, there's none of that is influencing any of what we're thinking about or discussing or looking at. You sit any restaurant that pops into your head that you can think of the decor, you can think of its the tables, the placemats, the glassware, the knives and forks, the art on the walls, the lighting, the mood, the music, all of that. None of that's here, so it ends up being more intimate because it is just the conversation and the voices around the table.
We're sitting here having the novelty experience, or at least most of us are around this table, of eating in the dark and having to navigate that. What's it like though if you're the chef that's in charge of choosing the menu for this kind of event? The executive chef here is Martin Hollis, and he's got his work cut out for him. Pretty challenging stuff, and I just wondered how he'd gone about that and what the challenges were, because this must go against every single granule of a chef's instincts to not concentrate on the presentation and to go for everything else. Obviously, you're used to the idea now, but be honest with me, Martin. When they suggested to you that you as a chef were going to do a fine dining experience in the dark, completely pitch black, did those eyes roll?
They rolled a little bit, but the kitchen's not in the dark, so we're fine. We can actually see what we're doing and where things are going on the plate. We're just making sure things are in the right place, so when people pick up the food, they can actually get the flavour explosions in their mouth. We've got one fish menu, we've got a meat menu, and we've got a vegetarian menu. So all the balance of the menus all had to be the same. So not necessarily all the textures are the same, but they've all got likes of a crunch, they've got some acidity in there, and there's some surprise sort of little flavours that hopefully people will pick up, because you can't see, some of your sensory things become stronger.
Are you kind of messing with our heads a bit, Martin? It's a bit power, isn't it?
It's a bit of power, As I mentioned early on to you, we do things with some of the school children around. We go visit schools, and we do a lemon jelly, but then we flavour it, we make it look like a strawberry jelly, and then we do other things as well, just to let them understand where their taste buds are within their tongue, because you've got a part for salt, you've got a part for bitter, you've got a part for sugar, you've got umami, and then they start to understand building a palate for themselves.
But just tell me how much you had to rethink all your instincts to do this. You must have learned quite a lot from this experience.
Well, I think like when you're writing menus and you're not always tasting the food, but you know what works well together and you know what textures and things you're looking for within the actual dish. It's like if you've got a puree of a vegetable, you want something crunchy, you want something hot, or if you're doing a dessert, you might want something cold, something moussey, something frozen, something warm. So you've got all those sort of things to contend with as well. So basically, like, so a lot of chefs will write a menu blind anyway, because they understand the colours, the seasons, and what we're trying to achieve as an end result. Then we go away and practice it or design the dish, and then it evolves from that.
As a chef, you're tasting food all the time, but I'm just wondering if there are regular points in the day when you are tasting things that actually you will close your eyes to maybe savour the intensity of a flavour. Is that something that would come naturally to you?
Something that grows with your palate and your style of cooking. Because like I said, when we get awarded rosettes for food, like we got 3 rosettes in the Road Hole restaurant, the AA inspectors were tutoring us years ago about like, if it's a carrot, it's got a taste of a carrot, because there's times when you maybe do like carrot and orange, the orange is going to overpower the carrot. So everything that you taste, you've really got to make sure that ingredient is standing out. So yes, we do like blind tasting to make sure that we have got the right sort of cookery method or the flavours right, but they're not overpowering and it's not going to be too strong in the final dish.
Will that mean actually just shutting your eyes, or will you put a blindfold on?
It's best just to like sit in the room away from everybody else. The dish is prepared by other chefs and it comes to you, and then you just like, this is this, and then sometimes, you know, the techniques and that these days, they're so precise with their cooking, the temperatures, the length of time things are cooked for. You know, it's very rarely that you get something that's really twisting your head.
I've got to push you before I leave you to get on with the meal, because I can see everybody sort of getting geared up now. You've said meat, you said fish, you said vegetarian. Give us another hint. What am I going to get? Because I don't want Phil to know, but you can tell me.
I can't tell you a thing.
What do you mean you can't tell me?
Because
give me an idea.
It'd spoil the experience for yourself.
Tell me. Give me a clue.
It'll cost you a fiver.
A fiver?
I'm cheap.
Martin Hollis, the exec chef, giving absolutely nothing away, and quite right too. But now I've got the meal in front of me, the main course, and I must say I'm using every sense I can. I'm using my knife in a way to try to tap down on the density on the plate and try and figure out exactly where things are. I've used my nose. I've got down and snorted the food, and the plate is not very pretty, but nobody can see me. And
Apart from fish, have you any idea what else is on there?
I think there might be a scallop there because I can feel something firmer, and I use my fingers for that. And then I cut into something. It was slimy and stringy, and I thought, oh my goodness, what is this? And I couldn't pull it free from my fork, and that was a bit yuck. But actually I realised it's a bit of sinewy spinach, and I love spinach. And once it hit my mouth again, it was that slimy thing with the mussel that I had in the starter that I went, ew, and sort of recoiled. And then I realised, no, this is a familiar taste. I like this. I think your brain it's like a guerrilla attacking your senses, isn't it? You're not queuing it up, so when you get something that you feel that's a bit alien, then you realise a nanosecond later, of course I know what this is, and it's very comforting. And then you start really exploring the depth of the thing, the flavour and the texture in a way I've probably never done before.
Are you using your hands or your...
Of course I'm using my hands.
You're not using your fork to eat?
No, I'm touching it with my fingers because I want to know what I'm having.
You couldn't do that in a restaurant,
I
Claire.
flipping well could.
And having no light, us sitting in the pitch black, has that added to the experience?
I would say I'm loving this experience. I think we're all kind of trading quite intimate, lovely, open conversation about food, maybe ourselves as well, and having a laugh and being much more open and non-judgmental. Sounds a bit hippy-dippy, but I'm not kidding. This is what's happening when you switch the lights off and you don't judge people by what they're wearing, what they look like, what their age is, what their weight is, what they're wearing, you know, or their face, or they got makeup or not, it doesn't matter. The food as well. I'm not being judgmental about the food until it hits my mouth.
How judgmental would you normally be?
Massively.
Really?
Because I would look at the presentation of something, thought that looks a bit yuck. Although I've been caught short with that as well. I've been to an amazing tapas place recently that really confounded me because it looked quite dull. And then I put the stuff in my mouth and oh boy, what a difference, what a difference. So, you know, you can't really judge a book by its cover. You can't really judge a plate by what it looks like. You've got to put it in your mouth. You've got to maybe shut your eyes even momentarily, I would say, and try and savour it. I will try to do that more now, because I now realise what I've been losing by being distracted by everything that I'm looking at. Darren, are they all the same, these experiences? Because you've done quite a few of these gigs.
I've been at Don Lemar for 3 years, and I've now served over 5,300 people in the dark. And although we are offering exactly the same thing for everybody, everybody experiences it in a different way because it's so unique. I mean, there's no way that you can possibly prepare for being in the dark, because finding pitch black in our civilization is actually remarkably difficult. So there's no way of knowing how you're going to react. So everyone reacts a bit differently, because for some people it's really exciting, for some it's horrendously terrifying, and for others it's, oh, I'm not sure about this, but why not give it a go? You know, you've got the full spectrum.
And you're actually blind yourself, Dan. I mean, what are kind of some of the reactions that you get from some of the diners, knowing that they've been served by a blind waiter?
Well, it's funny you say that, because although the whole team of us are blind waiters, not everyone knows that they're being served by a blind waiter in the first instance. A lot of people kind of assume that we've got some kind of night vision equipment. So for some people it can be fairly kind of surprising, I guess, because they're sort of like, how on earth can you possibly do this, you know? And I think even those who do know that they're being served by a blind person still I think perhaps marvel at what's possible and actually what's happening.
I've been surprised. You know, I'm sighted, and I'm surprised how inobtrusive and how irrelevant it is that you're blind. All you say to me is, excuse me, Claire, I've got your course here. That's the only difference from being served by someone sighted.
And the thing is, actually, that's also the best bit for us, because you have no other means of communicating while you're here in the dark. It's all about talking. And so, as a waiter myself, I think being in this sort of environment is far more liberating for me, just because I do have the freedom to actually be involved in a very small conversation with everybody.
There'll be people listening at home thinking, how does that work? How can a blind waiter be so efficient, serve a 3-course meal or a 4-course meal with precision?
The thing that I would usually say to somebody who's actually experiencing it at the time, because that is a very common question that I get asked, is, well, on the table in front of you, now that I've handed you your starter and your glass of water and your glass of wine, you know where your water and where your wine and where your plate is. So all I'm doing is that on a slightly bigger scale, if you like. And one advantage that I do have over you is that if you've come in here to try a dining in the dark experience, you're here for perhaps an hour and a half, 2 hours, whereas I've had most of my life to kind of get used to moving around without being able to see anything. So therefore I'm more comfortable with it, and so I'm just learning the room, the dining room, in a minute level of detail that is possible for anybody to do, actually, but that I'm very well practiced at.
Well, Darren, I can say you've been fantastic today, and your tips at the end of the table.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
I'm not telling you what end.
No.
It's a circular table, Philip. Oh, do you know what I'm loving as a radio presenter? Hearing all your voices and the richness, the nuance of the voices in the dark, and talking about food. I'm really listening. I'm really engaged. Whereas if I was looking at you, I'd probably be quite distracted by things. Yeah.
Have you become much less aware of the light or the non-existence of the light?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Who are you talking to?
Who are you?
Yes, I'm looking at you.
Yes, are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I feel quite connected to, I don't know everybody's name around this table. I've got a kind of rough idea of where you're all sitting, and I know your voices now, and I feel we're all in the same kind of weird zone now. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, there's a chink of light. Oh, it's weird.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Here we go.
Well, this is quite weird now. I can see. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm blinking. Oh.
Here we go.
Oh. my gosh, that was really, really amazing.
How does it feel to be out?
Darren, I don't want to come out. I want to go back.
Let's do it again.
I don't know about you, Non, but I actually want to go back. I don't like this anymore. What do you feel like emerging?
Part of me doesn't want to come out, but part of me feels, well, Phil, you'd love to come out to the light, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, but you know, I've had years to adapt to this world, Non, and I'm very comfortable in my surroundings, you know, and I'm just so pleased that we've all had such a great time inside here.
What was the worst bit?
Well, going in and out was the worst bit.
Yes, Darren.
Walking to somewhere where you can't see is frightening, but the actual sitting down was helpful, and having something in front of you could more or less juggle around.
How was it for you?
What I thought was really amazing was I wasn't really comfortable with a knife and fork. But when I started using my fingers, it was even better, because I've done something I've always quite enjoyed eating with my fingers, like fish and chips and things like that, you know, having the sensory feeling of using your fingers. So once I abandoned my knife and fork, I thought it was great.
What was the most surprising thing about the whole experience?
Yeah, I think it was just the fact that you did seem to connect not only with the food more, but with everybody all around you, you know. So it was an amazing experience, and I was saying somewhat glibly, I think, to my mum and Susan, who was at the other side of me, that you could imagine that you might be able to function as a blind person. You know, it's very artificial, and, you know, things might change, you know, quite quickly, but, you know, sensing what it was like without one of your senses was in some ways a privilege, you know. Weird thing to experience.
Okay, well, Phil, what an experience. We've had our tea then, and it was certainly different, wasn't it?
It was completely different, and it's certainly beyond all of my expectations. Well, in saying that, I kind of didn't know what to expect. I was so impressed at the way that everybody adapted to their surroundings. I was so impressed the way that people picked up on the food, the textures, the smells, and how people were not intimidated about losing the light around them. And I think it was amazing how we gelled as a team.
I know a little bit of what it's like to be you now, out dining with no idea what's in front of you and the surrounding restaurant atmosphere. And I felt, I think it's vulnerable, curiously vulnerable, but in a good way. But it made me, most of all, more mindful of what I was steering towards my mouth. It's an experiment I'm going to try again, maybe in a less pronounced way at home. I'm not going to stick a blindfold on, but anyway, maybe it's time to close our eyes and savour what's on that plate. I hope you've enjoyed the strange kitchen cafe journey with us. Big thanks to the Old Course Hotel in St Andrews. Check out similar Dining in the Dark experiences if you can. It is fascinating, well worth it. From Phil, me, and the rest of the team, thanks for listening.